Serious, transgender people of Reddit, what are some things you wish the general public knew understood about being transgender? There's so much I can think of that I don't know where to start. 1. That saying yes queen and you look prettier than me and I'm a normal woman aren't the positives you think. They make me feel like some bizarre monster. 2. That if you disagree with who we are, fine. I don't care. Just have the decency to leave us alone and interact with us at the basic human level. Don't make our lives harder just because of what you think is wrong or right. 3. Not all trans people are the same cookie cutter TV trope trauma parade. We're individual people with individual opinions, feelings, and histories. Treat us as such. 4. We just want to live our lives and feel safe. Please just stop harassing, killing, attacking, and alienating us. I don't want to be trans. Lots of us don't want to be this way. We just want to feel comfortable in our own skins and be happy. When I came out to my parents, I remember saying I don't want to be this way. I want to be normal and live my life. Which I think helped my parents understand a bit more about what I was feeling. If this shit was a choice, I would have never made that choice. The common narrative of knowing since you were a kid is really overrepresented. Same thing with all LGBTQ groups. Many of us, myself included, discovered it later. I discovered I was trans a few years after puberty started. Many people don't find out for well beyond that. It is incredibly inappropriate to ask a transgender person about their plans for any transgender related surgery. Why? Well, consider what parts of the body you would be asking about. Breasts? Genitals? Would you ask a cis woman if she plans to ever get a labiaplasty? Would you ask a cis man if he plans to or has had his penis circumcised? If those questions strike you as inappropriate, how would it not be inappropriate to ask the same or similar questions of transgender folks? I've had people I have just met and known for less than 5 minutes ask me if I plan to get a penis surgery, i.e. phalloplasty, or if I've had the surgery, as though there's a singular universal surgery that all trans people get. Or if I still have boobs. Like, come on. And some of them get mad at me for not wanting to answer those invasive personal questions about my genitals. That I'm not the devil for wearing a suit to prom. Literally. This past weekend was prom. I wore a suit, trans man still in the closet, and most of the teachers hated it. I live in a very conservative community, and someone who is a fab wearing anything other than a dress to prom is completely unheard of. I literally just wanted to feel comfortable for once. And then my uncle said that people were talking about my decision. And I was like, why, it doesn't matter that much. On a positive note, I looked in the mirror that night and finally saw myself. So yay. We're not obsessed with a gender divide debate each time the topic comes up. We all have different experiences, but most of us are simply tired of not being respected for literally being ourselves. The question for most of us isn't, can I compete in a national sports team? But really, will I be able to live with a body I like? And such. That being called brave for being myself feels pretty shitty. It makes me feel like I'm seen as just wearing a costume or some bad outfit. I'd really rather feel safe than brave any day of the week. That I don't want to cause problems. I don't want to be any different than anyone else. I'm not trying to offend or be controversial or be political or anything like that. I wish people, even though not everyone understands, trusted that I am who I am and I feel how I feel. I will be miserable if I cannot be myself. I just want to be normal in my identity and not be a conversation point. Trust us. We are no different than anyone else. We just want to be accepted and loved and seen for who we really are. I'm not ducking transgender just so I can use a different bathroom or compete in my opposite assigned gender at birth sport teams. This shit isn't a choice. I've prayed, pretended, and hurt myself to try to be different, but this is just the way I am. That just trying to accept how you were born and all promoting self-love on its own won't cure gender dysphoria. Trying to stay in the closet, be cis, and never allow yourself a crumb of transition pretty much never works and leads to you feeling awful or empty. For me, I came out, had an awful time with that, went back in the closet and tried to accept being female. I further broadened my perception of what a woman can be. I tried to abolish the idea of gender and gender roles from my mind. Tried to convince myself I was alright as I was. But it still didn't stop me from wanting to transition. At best I just gave the most sorrowful, resigned responses to questions about my gender identity while wondering if to myself I should have continued transitioning. At worst, I felt like some kind of misogynistic failure of a human being. I feel a lot better now that I'm letting myself start working towards it again. We just want to live our lives without every little aspect becoming a federal case or a gender studies class. Trans people set our alarms to get up for work. We shower. We brush our teeth. We worry about how much gas is in the car and wonder what to have for dinner later. But each of those things is made infinitely more anxiety inducing when there's an underlying and legitimate fear of, will I be harassed today? Will I die today? Life is hard. Please stop making it harder for us. Also, full disclosure, we're just as conflicted about Caitlyn Jenner as you are. Because she's a fame monger who killed a person. We support her in her transition and that's all. Lots of conservatives think I'm a degenerate who's going to turn their kids gay and want to put me in a mental institution. Lots of rich trust fund liberals claim to speak for me but often end up making us look bad with all their woke posturing. I just wish I wasn't seen only as a pawn for stupid culture wash tea. Just because I'm the first trans person you met doesn't mean I'm your personal educator. The constant explaining can be draining or triggering for some. How common it is for us to be fetishizers. The guy calling me a derogatory name is probably the same guy sexually harassing me at Comic-Con. It's particularly bad online. I don't mind people having things they're into. Trust me. My girlfriend has a thing for trans girl and I'm into some weird stuff myself. But people will bring it up in weird situations. I think if there's one thing I would want the general public to know is that we all have unique experiences in life. Everyone's different in one way or another and if we accept that and try to understand people rather than judge them right away I think we would all be a lot happier. I'm transgender. And transitioned about 10 years ago. I live my day-to-day life like anyone else. I work. I pay my taxes. I'm saving for a home. Our lives are not that much different than yours. Unfortunately the media sensationalizes every headline about us. And the crossdresser culture takes the spotlight when most people think of transgender people. It's a shame. Really. We're just people trying to live our lives like everyone else. And trying to not feel hated by the world. It's not a choice I made overnight for fun. I was extremely suicidal living as my birth sex and only started improving after medically transitioning. Had I not come out I'd 100% would have died before my 18th. Imagine waking up one day and a tray that only the opposite sexes randomly grew on your body. Everybody you saw decided that one tray meant you were definitely the opposite gender you actually are and treated you horribly if you corrected them. Hormones are not amphetamines. You don't get addicted to them. They don't give you a hit of gendered energy. It's not a high. It's so slow of a process and it takes weeks to start feeling let alone seeing results. I feel like this is more for the cracking eggs than non-trans people but I've seen this misconception more than enough and it helps perpetuate the big OT by making hormones seem like they're on the same level as recreational drugs. That comes with connotations of the drug war and moral arguments etc etc. Just they're not hard drugs. In addition to everything that has already been said, you don't know who is trans. I have gone stealth for years and everyone I tell or who finds out is shocked. I'm trans-mask. And recently had top surgery. Almost every doctor and a lot of regular people gave me some spiel about. Are you sure you want to do that? I could never do that to my body. I also hate the question, have you had the surgery? As if surgery makes this body any more or less valid for anyone of any representation. This is my vessel. My business. And unless you're paying me. Stfu. Not every trans person is going to look cis. Trans people can be androgynous, non-binary, or stealth. And don't have to look or be a type of way to be trans. Not every trans person takes hormones. Not every trans person wants surgery. We're not trying to turn your cis kids trans. We want to turn your trans kids into adults. Comments about surgery and such are generally unwanted. Why are you so obsessed about what's in my pants? And that also leads me to bathroom issues. Men's bathrooms don't have sanitary bins. That I'm transitioning so I can finally be happy in my own body. Not to be perceived as a girl by society so I can have all the perks of being a girl, you know. Like the endless harassment and sexual advances. People treating you like you're fragile. You know. That stupid toxic masculinity shit. I'm doing this for me. Not everyone else. I'm not pushing an agenda. I'm not here to convert or trick people. I'm not here be your little experiment. I'm doing this so I can look in the mirror and actually see myself instead of staring at some guy who I hate. That trans women don't owe you femininity and trans men don't owe you masculinity. There's plenty of masculine cis women out there as well as feminine cis men. You don't gotta keep those people saying that they're not femme-masc enough, and the same goes for trans people. Trans women can be tomboys. They can dress up masculine and act masculine, but they're still women because that's how they identify. Same goes for trans men. They can be femboys. They can wear skirts if they like. It doesn't suddenly invalidate their gender. Essentially treat trans folk the same way you would their cis counterparts. We frown upon people telling masculine girls they need to be more feminine. The same behavior should be upheld with trans girls too. I just want to pee, I'm not gonna pay you. That cis people feeling a little more free to buck gender stereotypes. Letting their kids play with and dress how they want. Never telling little boys they shouldn't cry. etc. helps all of us. The more normal it is to play with how you present your gender. The less bullying and ridicule when you step out. Even to transition back into the binary. And the more that we can all explore what it feels like to not be shoved in a box out of fear how society will feel about us. You might think it's a funny joke to say something like, well, at least you won't have to deal with periods. But it's not. For you it might be a hassle. Because you take your fertility for granted. I'm so tired of this joke that just serves to remind me I'll never carry children for my partner. Please stop saying it. I don't want to turn your kids gay or trans. As a teacher, all I want is to do my job and make them feel comfortable learning. All my students learn from me is how to speak foreign languages. And they've been doing it pretty damn well. I'm blessed to have a boss who recognizes my dedication over my gender. You can't turn anyone anything. I was raised in a repressed place. By repressed parents. In a repressed religious school, and despite all, I still felt like I was in the wrong body throughout childhood and adolescence. And I had no idea why I felt that way. No one could have possibly planted that in my mind. Trans PPL weren't even something that existed in my sheltered conception. As a 7-year-old wishing they could wake up different the next day and feeling sad when it didn't happen. That no one is telling trans children to take hormone medication or get surgeries. Surgeries are for adults and hormones are for no one younger than teenagers looking to grow up in the puberty of their preferred gender. If your 5-year-old wants to transition, you cut their hair. Give them new clothes. And don't worry about it again until they're at least preteens. That we're in far more danger in a bathroom than you, your wives, children, or whatever excuse the conservatives are making this week, have ever been from us. The laws and arguments they make are wholly and entirely about making our lives harder and more dangerous. Not protecting you from any real threat. We're in far more danger just in general too. The rates of assault and sexual assault against trans people are much higher than those of our cis counterparts. That it's not a choice. I don't enjoy being trans personally. I just happen to be trans. Also, I'd rather people did their research properly about trans people rather than asking any of us. Sometimes I'm not in the right place to be answering those sorts of questions. Also, sometimes trying to be inclusive makes me feel othered. One person I know says that their group is open to women and people who identify as women. Both on their own are fine. But together it makes me feel like I'm not thought of as actually a woman. Also, we're as unique as everyone else. Some of us are utter assholes. But not 'cause they're trans. They're just a DCK. I wish people understood that you don't have to fully understand me to respect me. I'm non-binary and trans, and it seems like a lot of people think they have to be able to understand a dissertation on the nuance and abstraction of gender before using my pronouns or name. At this point in my life, being misgendered makes me wince in pain. It stings. And having to join debate club just to be treated with respect is too high a bar, and it makes me just not want to deal with people in general. Like, I can't imagine any other identity that is readily met with debate when you're telling someone else about it. Why is this response acceptable for trans people? That you can't not know you're trans until later in life. Like, I'm 38 and connecting the dots fully. It took the description of imagine yourself in a job you don't like, but with few other options. It's drudgery. Crushing, and you know you're just going through the motions. For it to click for me. And now I get to choose between the potential for more personal happiness and my wife of over 10 years because she's not into women like that. Not every trans person knows they're trans as little kids. Cis people all seem to be under this weird delusion that you can't be trans unless you've known since you came out of the womb. Remember, people, you're never too old to know you're trans. We don't owe anyone an appearance that matches our gender identity. Non-binary folks don't owe anyone androgyny. Trans men don't have to dress mask and so on. That transitioning is more often than not a choice between life and death. I know if I hadn't been able to come out when I did, I would have killed myself within the week. And that hormones, testosterone in this case, absolutely saved my life and mental health. Denying trans people the opportunity to transition is slow murder. That detransitioning is not the gotcha cis people think it is. I detransitioned. That doesn't make me less trans. Or mean I regretted transitioning in the first place. Detransitioning involved its own set of social and biological changes. Also, turned out I'm just bigender. So I transitioned yet again later on. Gender identity is complicated and fluid. And my detransitioning doesn't signify regret or invalidate anyone else's identity. At one point I detransitioned because I moved cross country and couldn't find an endo to continue HRT for a few years. It wasn't regrets. And it wasn't me not being serious about myself. It was just an environment I couldn't thrive in. Lack of accessible resources and or lack of funds are two reasons plenty of people overlook, and you really gotta wonder why. We can't always pass. Trans people are sometimes only seen as legit once they are unmistakably guy-girl. Not only does that discount non-binary people, it is also highly unrealistic. Many trans people are not on hormone therapy. Many cannot or do not get expensive surgeries. Trans men cannot always bind. It isn't safe. And so many trans men have to go days in public with full boob. Trans women cannot always tuck, so it is not comfortable for long periods. Trans people can get depressed and forget to shave. They can have big thighs, skinny little chicken legs, protruding Adam's apples, and other very prominent sex divergence traits. Daily changes in presentation do not make a person more or less trans or NB. It's not a choice. And the experience of dysphoria, misgendering and dead naming that kind hurts. What a turf is. We aren't all in your face about it. For lack of a better term. I'm very much down low. Unless you knew me before, you wouldn't know, and I moved for this reason. And if I can't avoid it, I don't tell new people I meet. I'm glad some people can be proud of being trans. But I never tell someone I meet if I can avoid it. I feel like I get treated differently afterward and it makes me embarrassed. Gender is ducking weird. Lots of arbitrary social stuff. Some psychology, philosophy, religion, and personal experience shaped from a mix of the three. Overall, it's an abstract clusterfuck. And everyone's pissed off about it. Being trans doesn't mean I have an instruction manual on all this. All I know is that something is wrong. Something got ducked up or mismatched. All I can do is fix it as best as I can with what's available to me. And hope everything goes relatively well so I can move on and do more interesting things with my life. I don't know what a man, woman, or non-binary person is objectively. I don't know what any of those things mean. Why they exist. What it means to be or not be them. How to be them. And so on. I say I'm a woman because that feels right. It's important for my mental health. I need to be a woman to be the best version of myself. Which I don't really understand. I can only spend so much time and energy justifying myself though. Nothing really makes sense, so I'm just going to do what I need to do to be happy. Non-binary people are transgender too. NBs like me are often left out of trans discussions and excluded from trans queer spaces. It sucks because, well, we also exist. You're not trans because you transition. You transition because you're trans. That yes. There are some terrible people who are trans. There are predators who are trans. There are predators in every demographic of human being. That does not make us all inherently predatory. If someone harms you, I am sorry. But do not use your wounds to inflict more on a community that already endures so much uninformed hatred. Please stop asking about our genitals. I saw a clip of a talk show where there was a 5-year-old trans kid and the host asked if they had the surgery. No, that is never okay to ask a child. It only becomes your business if we actually plan to have sex or if you're my doctor. WTF. I don't understand why anyone ever believes that children are getting bottom surgery. But 5? Not every trans person wants people to know they're trans. Some of us have extremely bad dysphoria and feel a lot better if people think we're cis or assigned the gender we feel at birth. We don't walk in a bathroom with our stuff hanging out. Being trans is not a trend. If there seem to be a lot more trans people around in recent years, well, there were a lot more left-handed people around after schools stopped trying to force everyone to be right-handed. 2. Asking a trans person what their birth name was is extremely uncomfortable. It is not a sex thing when we choose to keep the genitals we were given at birth. It has more to do with the cost of surgery and not wanting to screw up our urethra. That there's a very good chance that you've been in a public bathroom with a trans person without even knowing it and it went fine. Asking pronouns is so much less obnoxious than are you a boy or a girl? I'm fairly androgynous. And just about every single time someone asks it goes like this. Stranger. Hey, I don't mean to be offensive, but are you a boy or a girl? Me. I'm a girl. S. Sorry to be weird about it, but you just have, insert qualities about my physical appearance, and I couldn't tell. Me. Right, thanks for asking. S. Especially with more qualities about my physical appearance, and with all this trans stuff in this day and age. Me. Yo, I know. S. But I'm totally accepting of trans people. Don't get me wrong. I just couldn't tell because, even more physical qualities about my appearance. I prefer people ask pronouns because it goes like this. Stranger. Hey, I don't mean to be offensive, but what are your pronouns? Me. She, her. Thanks for asking. S. No problem. And that's it. I don't have to endure the uncomfortable comments on how I look. I'm well aware, and I genuinely don't want to talk about it. If the trans person brings up the topic, be polite and ask questions. But most transgender people don't like their gender constantly being brought up.